Hey everybody, welcome back to Quarantine Storytime. It is Day 2, Chapter 2, with Curse of the Mud Spirit. Written by me, Halen Teal, and illustrated by Cameron Roark. If I forgot to mention last time, if you'd rather read this than watch it or listen to it, shoot me a message, a comment, an email, anything you'd like with your email, and I'll give you the free book, illustrations and all, just like you would have bought on Amazon. I just love my stories, and I love sharing them with you guys, especially when you might need a little extra. Chapter 2. As Thomas's head separated from his neck and fell deep into the dark crevice that was the mud spirit's belly, his body splashed flat and limp on the muddy bank below. As the mud spirit ingested the head, he was pulled back into the bog as if he was being sucked in by a vacuum. Beneath the surface, he was turned inside out, where his brain popped out of his muddy round head. In the now bright white surrounding them, Thomas's brain appeared, seemingly floating up to accompany the mud spirits. For a moment, the brains faced each other. "Are we in heaven, Mud Spirit? What just happened?" shouted Thomas's brain. "Where did all the mud go? Why is everything all white?" "I'm sorry, Tom. It just had to be done. One day you'll understand." "Now fast! What will you make me?" shouted the Mud Spirit's brain. "What? What will I make you what?" "Do not ask questions, Tom. What will you make me? What will I turn into?" yelled the Mud Spirit at the top of his invisible body's lungs. I don't know, Mud Spirit," said Thomas, becoming more troubled than ever. "I don't understand." "What will I turn into?" "A kitten!" screamed Thomas, and the white went dark. Thomas and the Mud Spirit couldn't see or feel anything at all. They couldn't feel the presence of each other or the shape of themselves. After a few moments of this odd sensation, quite new to Thomas, but familiar to the Mud Spirit, they ballooned up to the surface of the muddy bog together, popping to the surface just the way the objects had earlier. Thomas, floating on the surface with ease, looked around. He didn't see the Mud Spirit anywhere. He saw the shoe, the laundry basket, an overall-clad body with no head, a toy train. An overall-clad body with no head? That was his body. Frightened Thomas tried to back away from the body. He tried to look at his hands, but he only saw the mitten-like hands of the Mud Spirit. He bumped into something behind him as it shouted in a cute, high-pitched voice, "Hey, can you give me a hand here?" He turned around to see a tiny white kitten with glittering periwinkle eyes staring up at him in horror, trying its hardest to stay afloat in the thick, drowning mud. Thomas quickly scooped the little kitten up and put him in the half-floating laundry basket. "I'm so sorry, Tom," said the little fluffy cat. "I just had to do it. But really, did you have to turn me into a kitten? Really? A kitten?" "Mud Spirit, is that you? What happened?" cried Thomas, trying to string the events that just took place into an order that might possibly make sense. "Kid, you've got a lot to learn. You were just thwarted by the curse of the Mud Spirit. I can tell you all about it. It's not like we have anything else to do." The kitten stared at the dark mud that had stuck to his new, pale white coat. "First, you have to take care of that old body of yours, and then we can get to the details." He started to shake off what little mud was left on him, fluffing up his surprisingly bright coat. "What do you mean, take care of it?" asked Thomas. "Do I give myself a funeral or something?" "No, any earth you touch will turn into mud. You have to eat it." "What? I have to eat my own body?" "Oh, stop your complaining. It's going to get a lot worse, so just get it over with already. When you're done belly aching, I'll meet you over here under the bridge. If someone who can see you notices a giant mud monster talking to a kitten, I'm pretty sure they'll call the police." the kitten said as he reached one arm out of the laundry basket hatching and began paddling over to the bridge. Thomas looked from the kitten over to the bank where his lifeless, headless body lay like an old pancake on a cold, cold plate. He swallowed hard, but not in an appetizing, scrumptious kind of way, in more of an, oh my God, why do I have to do this kind of way. Since he wasn't the kind of child to question why he was doing any given action at any given time, he didn't have to question that he had to eat it. Even though he didn't know why, it was just the way things were. He didn't see an easy way out of his newfound predicament, but he didn't really think if there were any other options either. He moved towards the body, feeling how strange it was to glide with no legs or feet to propel you. Like he was being forced to eat Brussels sprouts, he opened his mouth, closed his eyes, and gulped the body down in one big swallow. For it was then that he learned the mud spirit didn't really have teeth. Much to his surprise and dismay, the overalls that were just on his body popped to the surface of the boggy swamp and floated there suspended. Thomas stared in disbelief at how fast the plumbing that was now his bowels sent the overalls out into the world. As he shouted at this event, the kitten from under the bridge called out, "Come on over, the mud is great!" As Thomas rolled across the top of the mud over to the bridge, almost like lava or chocolate syrup would, he shouted out, "Mud spirit, why did you do this to me if you like the mud? First, I am no longer the mud spirit. You are. Secondly, this is the first time in 6 years I have found the mud to be great. I finally have a reason to feel that way," said the kitten. "What is that reason?" asked Thomas as he approached the petite feline under the shadow of the tunnel. "Well, if you had been composed of and trapped in mud for 6 whole years, I'm sure you would feel the same way. Well, I guess one day you'll know what I mean." 6 years? You mean I won't be home in time for dinner? "You may never be home for dinner, kid. Where should I start?" asked the kitten. The former mud spirit began to tell Thomas of the curse of the mud spirit, how it works, and how he was ripped from his happy life into this mess 6 long years ago. There will always be a mud spirit, and there can be only one. The mud spirit has certain abilities, like mind reading and invisibility, but only when he is mature and the person possessing him has been there and learned the ropes of the role. The invisibility didn't come until much later, the kitten explained, but it was nice to get into the movie theater for free and not have anyone notice him. It also has certain drawbacks, like turning any earth or water he touches into the same brown mud he's made of. The largest drawback, of course, is just being the mud spirit. In order to pass the curse onto someone else, you have to lure them close in and bite their head off and swallow it all the way down to your belly. You can do this to people, of course, but also animals. The problem is that they immediately have to tell you what your new form will be. So if you bite a dog's head and he says, "Bark," well, you'll unfortunately become just that, bark. Whether it's bark of a maple or bark of a cypress, it undoubtedly would not make for a very interesting life. Because of that, most mud spirits consume humans in hopes that their second life will be something worth living. It's a good thing you didn't say hamburgers. Well, I may have eaten you if that had happened. His name, 6 years ago, was Philip Greenwalt. He had a wonderful girlfriend, a wonderful home, and a head full of hair and hopes for the life in front of him. He loved his job at the radio station, fixing all of their machines, and he loved gardening. It was the gardening that was his demise. The mud spirit before him sneaked into his garden one night, waiting for him until morning, when during his normal watering session before work, the mud spirit poised beside a shiny cherry tomato. When Philip reached down to check on its progress, the mud spirit came up from the earth and devoured his head without saying a word. "Really, at least a warning would have been nice," said Philip the kitten. "Plus, I really loved my girl, and I couldn't let her see me at all as the mud spirit." Well, you can see her now, exclaimed Thomas. You may not be a man, but every girl surely loves a kitten. They sat under the bridge in the shadows of the fading sunlight, Thomas, holding no grudge towards the kitten for what he had been bestowed upon him, talked with his new friend about his past, his beloved girlfriend Tammy, and what they should do in their newfound situation. Since you said kitten, do you think that means a kitten forever, or do you think I'll grow into a cat one day? I don't know. I wonder whose head I will bite, and what I will become once it's all over, said Thomas, imagining the endless possibilities. So why did it take you this long to bite someone? It seems like it has to be a pretty easy thing to do. Yeah, if you don't like having a conscience, spat the kitten, showing his little bottom fangs. I finally did it because I got so desperate to see my Tammy. I traveled around for so long, but every time I would get close to doing the deed, I just felt too guilty. When I saw you, I just couldn't wait anymore. For the first 3 years, I just stayed at home, under the house and in the garden, watching Tammy. I was so love-lost and lonesome. The little kitten hung his head in sorrow, thinking about his beloved, and if ever a kitten could cry a tear, a little salty drop fell down his fuzzy face. What happened? Why did you finally leave the safety of your own home? Did Tammy move away? Asked Thomas. Tammy tore the garden up after only 1 week. After she threw out all of my belongings, it was hard to stay and see her that way. But I finally left after a new boyfriend moved in. I just couldn't bear it. Well, that doesn't sound very nice. I thought Tammy was supposed to be in love with you, a perplexed Thomas asked. Tammy loves me. It was just her way of grieving. It was just her way of trying to heal after I disappeared without warning, the kitten said with a tone of voice that was so uneasy he really might not have believed himself. The two sat under the fleeting light of the sunset, quiet for a time, staring sadly down at the kitten's 4 feet, since Thomas didn't have any of his own to stare down at anymore. Finally, seeing Thomas's change in his normally happy demeanor, the kitten suggested, "Why don't we walk around a little? Discuss what we're gonna do." With no change to his character, he added, "Maybe we can find a burger joint that has put out extras for the night?" And with that, they walked as new friends into the sunset, their silhouettes awkward and their situation even stranger. The end of chapter 2. I will see you tomorrow. For Quarantine Storytime, we're going to do chapters 3 and 4. Y'all have a good rest of your day.